And welcome everyone to another High Vibe channeling session on this last day of May, May 31st, 2026. Tonight we have the repeat esteemed pleasure of having Serge Grandbois and his higher self, Kris, Kris, come in. And they are a perennial favorite of ours. And his approach is rooted in the passion for the human condition to unlock the potential of our human adventure. And Kris likes to approach it from the concepts of mindfulness, consciousness creation, and conscious creation, law of attraction, and then those teachings offer new paths to empowerment, well-being, and a greater understanding of our lovely universe. And they've together tag teamed and have transformed many different lives and for many different beings by opening minds and alerting people and making them aware of their infinite possibilities that they have in this little creative nest egg we call Earth and physical reality. In a world full of uncertainties and disempowerment, alternative approaches, like those offered by Kris and Serge, offer vital pathways to reclaim your personal power and finding a renewed sense of direction, purpose, and meaning. You can see his website, channelingkris.com. That's Kris for more information and sign up for his classes, his personal sessions, and whatever you choose, it will help open and expand your mind. And welcome back, Serge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the intro. And it's a pleasure to swim along the other fishes in this big ocean of consciousness. And hmm, I think I will just let Kris take off from here. So this is the launching pad. Now we trust that you are all comfortable.
Yes, thank you, Kris.
Indeed. And we thank you for your consideration. You briefly mentioned, and many people would tend to agree with you, that sometimes the world appears in a state of uncertainty, and people naturally gravitate to different ideas, different philosophies, different views that perhaps offer them a sense of certainty, however that is done. And often that grounding eventually just reflects some more uncertainties, because the uncertainties are projected out into the so-called external or exterior world, the consensus reality, that agreed upon plane of existence, and totally neglects the internal field of relationality, of relationships, that is your true field of empowerment. And it is an important distinction we make, because even at the physical level, that relational field, in your terms, is composed of the atoms and molecules and the protons and the quarks and everything else that has existed since time immemorial in your universe. You yourselves, your physical forms, your bodies, your organs are composed of that matter that has been experienced by suns and moons and planets and galaxies, black holes and white holes, and so many other things that has been part of that magnificent creation, extending from consciousness itself, from what you refer to as all that is. So every single one of the atoms and molecules that makes up your physical form is the stuff of stars and suns and space. You are walking, breathing, and living galaxies and universes. And even just a gentle reminder that this is what you are composed of, physically speaking, might be enough to snap you back and away from the idea that your world is unsafe, that your world is uncertain. Now, one must also agree that there is always a certain level, a thin sliver of change and so-called chaos, meaning transformation in your world and in your universe and even in your lives. That is the nature of the thing, if you like. But overriding that principle is the very stuff of the universe, which is in constant states of change and transformation that cannot be avoided. It creates the platforms and the stages for your own challenges, not that your own challenges are out to get you, but instead are out to help you transform your lives towards empowerment. We may not be able to put it more plainly than that. There will always be some form of challenge. And that isn't to be a source of angst. It is to be a source of comfort that you are never stagnant, that you are never going to just sit there and rot, but that instead you are always in a state of growth and transformation. And when you view it that way, that you are always in motion, there can indeed be the recognition that this is indeed your nature. This is indeed the most secure state of being, that you are never static. What happens to a body of water when it becomes static? The water becomes stale. It has no new source of nourishment, nothing fresh, and it eventually becomes stagnant. Nothing can live in it. So consider yourselves most fortunate that you have had the foresight and the insight to allow yourselves to shake your lives up every once in a while so that you can recognize that your roots are deeply in life, and life is a growing, living process. We could say that if life ever became always the same, you would find ways to stir the pot. Does that make sense to you so far?
Very much so. Thank you, Kris.
So there will always be something to invite you to explore the hidden dimensions of yourselves, the hidden rooms that have always been there, the hidden you that has always been just around the corner, inviting you to grow beyond your perceived limitations. And if you perceive in some form or another that somehow or other you are being limited, that there are some iniquities in your life, understand immediately that these are self-made barriers and that you have the ability, the innate knowledge and wisdom to transform that. And sometimes something as simple as the recognition and then asking, whether you say your subconscious or your inner self, asking for assistance in transforming the situation, you will get a response. And it is most important that you pay attention, that you notice. Most people consider the past as something to get away from. They consider the future as something to go towards. And they are so caught up that they forget that the present moment is not a waiting room. It is exactly where you need to be. It is the point of power, so to speak. That way you don't have to run around in circles looking for your so-called lost self. I feel lost. And quite possibly you're not lost. You have simply gathered your attention and focused it somewhere else than the present moment. And just a little tweaking of your mindset in that way may bring interesting results. So now, please feel free to make inquiries or observations.
Greetings to you, and thank you very much for being with us and for your very empowering message.
Hmm. The pleasure is usually more ours, but we just don't boast about it so much.
Thank you. Um, yeah, on what you said, I believe our higher selves and other beings give us hints and clues.
Indeed. The only thing they won't do is smack you.
For me, it would be very good actually
Hmm.
sometimes. But
And we are glad that you said higher selves, not higher self, because you yourself are a multidimensional entity, as your higher selves would be, literally as civilizations of selves. And you only consider it higher self simply because of a particular perspective. You are the seeds of those other selves, and they are also the seeds of you. So there is a beautiful interconnectedness and play between selves where information, knowledge, and wisdom is exchanged. And the so-called higher self often luxuriates in seeing your so-called less than higher self suddenly grow in wisdom. Consider a forest, for instance. You see trees. They all seem to grow above the ground. You might not necessarily pay attention to the fact that they also grow below the ground. And there is also a layer of mycelium, a special type of fungi, that connects all the roots in the forest, bringing them nutrients, alerting them to certain dangers, for instance. But above all of that, also, the trees in the forest also share knowledge and nutrients with their own offspring. The seeds that have fallen near the original tree also grow. So the forest can be said to be one large living entity with individuated expressions of the forest itself. more or less mimicking what you consider the multidimensional self. So when you walk in the forest, take the time to luxuriate in the what Japanese call forest bathing, into
Mm,
the energy that
mm,
they envelop you with. Because in some ways, apart from form, they are not that different from humans.
mm. I agree. I was thinking of this recently because I was on the bus and I was looking at all the trees among the houses, and I saw them also as people, and I compared them to all of us moving around and communicating, and it was also all of them, like a big community also of trees.
Yes, indeed. They are, forests is a community of individualized trees, but all together they are a kind of entity, if you want.
Hmm. Yes, and I wanted to ask if it is possible for you to give me a short assessment on the clues that are left for me.
Provide context.
Like what's my higher selves saying? Because I think, I'm very caught up in my own world, and I have the feeling that sometimes I miss clues. So could you give me some feedback on clues that I may have missed?
Hmm. By clothes, do you mean other bodies or just fashion?
Oh,
Clues, not clothes.
okay.
Repeat, please.
Um, I would like some feedback, if possible, from my higher selves on the clues that they have left for me.
Clues, not clothes.
Clues,
Yes.
indeed.
Thank you.
So your inner self, or if you want, you can also say your subconscious. It is an expression of that. They can communicate to you through a variety and not just internally. It could be what we refer to as a little oddment. Say you're walking to work and you see something that captures your attention more than anything else. And that little something more or less pulls your attention and you start wondering about this. Say you see a little bird and it captures your attention. And as you do that, you experience certain feelings, certain states of mind, perhaps even imagery may come, and you may think, oh, this is so silly. I'm on my way to work. Don't bother me. That would be something you need to pay attention to. You could also have interesting dreams that are perhaps a little bit out of the ordinary, that are meant to get your attention. You could also engage in conversations with friends, and one friend may say something that others would consider run of the mill. This is how he or she talks. But to you, it strikes a different chord, something in that. It may convey imagery or feeling tones. So your inner self is communicating all the time. It is only a difficulty when your attention is drawn away. So, for instance, you could even be reading a story or listening to a song or watching a movie, and something happens or you hear something that normally you would not pay attention to, and all of a sudden it strikes a chord. It catches your attention more than anything else, as if the rest becomes meaningless. except for this part, that it touches you deeply, it moves you deeply. So it is about training yourself to be receptive to these kinds of communications. For instance, many people say, "Well, I don't believe in dreams. Dreams are meaningless. They are just the results of eating bad cheese at night." They may never receive the communication because the inner self recognizes that you don't care for the dreams or the messages. Therefore, why should it give you some? Do you follow?
Yes.
So you can make a list of all the ways that self can communicate to you, and then begin to focus on a few of them, not all of them, but just a few of them, enough so that you start the process going on. It is like when you dig for a well. Usually after you make the hole, you usually have to pour water in it to prime it. And then the rest of the well water is drawn up. So prime the well, so to speak. Does that also make sense? It is like listening to your intuition. It is none different than that. That's what you call it. But these are communications. Do you follow?
Yes.
So allow yourself and do not be overly concerned. Did I get the message? Did I get it right? Just allow it to seep through your relaxation. So relax your radar, so to speak. It doesn't have to be on 24 hours a day. It just has to be available. So relax into it and enjoy. If you have a certain expectation and the communications don't meet your expectations, then you might think, oh, am I doing something wrong? Is this right? Does this exist? So put those concerns aside and just know that you are always being communicated with. You just have to find the right station like a radio. And there could be many stations. You just have to play with the radio until you get them all. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you very much.
And it isn't just a feeling, a word, an idea. It could be images that pop into your mind when you are especially not so focused on getting it right.
Mm.
Correct?
Yes. Thank you.
Focusing too much on getting it right also blocks it.
Mm.
So
Yes.
you have to, it is like learning to swim, if you like. The first few times, you might not swim so well. You might not be an Olympic champion in 2 minutes, but gradually you'll be able to swim the whole length of the pool, maybe even do some backstrokes, dive, and so on with time. You have to become a little more expert. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Indeed, then.
And thank you, Kris, because you're the perfect person to provide some perspective on this. And I know I'm looking at it from a human point of view, but I'm really interested in the mechanics of my open invitation channeling where so many beings come in. Now, I know they're all my energy because I cannot experience anything but my energy.
Indeed.
But I know that there are other energies which are pushing on that, and what I experience is my interpretation of them, correct?
Yes.
Can you help me understand more about those open invitation sessions? Because I know one of the groups that I'm an aspect of, the USOL, they tend to what they call man the door, and they can soothe me if something goes awry, and they control which beings or invite which beings come in.
Hmm. So in a certain old-fashioned term, they are the gatekeepers,
Exactly.
or if you want, the bouncers.
Are both, and the doorman and the head waiter, they call themselves.
Yeah, all of these. Now, these are aspects of self that are assisting the flow of energy, the flow of exchanges. And the majority of channelers, so to speak, work with a few. They may develop an affinity for certain energy patterns, for certain energy exchanges. There might be several as well. And you get to manage ultimately. So let's say later tonight, you have a particular affinity for one or two. Another week, you may have an affinity for another one or two. And the triage ultimately depends on you, what you're most comfortable with. Because on the one hand, you don't necessarily want to feel like a sock puppet. And on the other hand, you also want to make yourself available for this energy exchange. So you can, say, have a round table and have an agreement with some of them or several of them that would manage to sustain the flow of energy as well as provide you with one moment. £20 puppy who thinks he's a 500-ton elephant. Now, the main idea is that you can learn to govern the exchange with what you are comfortable with. You are not by any means obliged to the entire lineup or the chorus line if you want, because you have to determine what works best for you. And they can come to a consensus as well as to what is best for you because you are the primary being here. You are not secondary. You are the primary being.
Yeah,
Does that,
yeah, oh no, that's clear. I have no desire to change it. I like the way that it flows.
as long as it flows and it also brings you sustenance.
And others as well. I am curious about when a new energy appears to come in, I get like a dark gray or a black outline, and sometimes a sense of movement or an overlay of additional details which don't come through in the channeling. Is that more of me just having a deeper understanding of that field of information about that particular species or being that I just capsulize, I guess, like a zip drive and bring it into my physical experience?
On the one hand, you are responding to sometimes a new interpretation of energy. Mm, as if somehow or other you were able to speak multiple languages, and all of a sudden you decide to speak in a different dialect or with an accent that is not familiar to you. So these are variations on the theme. And that particular process is also important to be able to be flexible to that degree, because each one has a particular kind of signature, if you like, and you can recognize them. And some of the signatures may announce themselves by what you described. So you know the game is afoot. And it is up to you to either invite or ask to stay in the background. This is entirely up to you. Even Joseph, in the first few years, experienced different changes, such as a personality called Anderson and several others. And once in a while, they might still show up on the sideline or background, and he is entirely at liberty to have them incorporate into our own procedures, or our own patterns can change, and that allows the other to come in. And he has some favorites, of course, and we have our own as well. So all of this to say that you have at your disposal a great amount of neural flexibility. That is important. It is not meant to be tossed aside, but to examined, experimented with, and in the long run, gather as much knowledge, information, and wisdom, how you can weave that together into a perhaps consistent set of personalities or personas, because that is also important. The human personality structure is exactly that. It is a structure, and it can accommodate, just like a large house can be added to. You can add rooms to it, or extend the basement, or just expand an entire floor, or go up, however you wish to construct it. So your own personality is very, very flexible. And that is actually a very, very good thing. Most people have boxed their personalities in very small packages, which maintains a very small worldview. But when you can start to recognize that your psyche or inner house may have rooms you never thought existed, but here they are, that's when the neuroflexibility begins to show itself. Does that make sense as well?
Oh, absolutely it does. And
Again, one of our favorite analogies with you is your books. So the bookshelves contain dozens and dozens of books, and that's a small portion. Each book in itself represents a particular perspective. Whether they are sci-fi or otherwise, still all of that in some ways, whether you have read all of them or not, is irrelevant. The point is that they incorporate some kind of worldview that gets added, stitched into the fabrics of your own personality structure. And that makes up a small fraction of yourself, as does everyone else, everyone you meet, everyone you come across, all the adventures you go on, everywhere, even your dreams. This is all information that gets added to your persona. So you are always growing. And that's why we emphasized a little bit in our original monologue to allow flexibility is sometimes a little frightening. You don't know what you will become, but you know that the adventure could be well worth it. And this channeling excursion, whether individually or collectively, is a great venturing forth, perhaps not unlike the original Star Trek monologue, where no one has gone before. Or if they have, it has been long forgotten in history. So your species has always wanted to push the boundaries, not just of knowledge, but also the wisdom to apply that knowledge. Knowledge is one thing, but the wisdom to apply it is a completely different beast.
And
Does
so,
that make sense to you?
yes, I think that's very interesting. I also view it as part of my training or development for the actual physical open contact events, because that broadens the scope of energies which my biological form can handle in those experiences.
May very well be.
And I also, and that's one, I mean, I do most of those transcripts because I do like gleaning additional information and getting more of that recall from those. But from time to time, we get the idea that our concepts are something that we bring up as in our human form is something novel to those beings who come into experience, and it can change, their entire perspective or their species, just like one person with a new idea can change a community or a family or a nation.
Indeed.
So,
For instance, even reading some of the transcripts, initially you read words. What you interpret is sometimes very, very different. And it could lead to a sudden insight in plain sight, but never noticed before. And that expands your entire roster of ideas. It just blows up the old ideas apart, and you realize, oh, there were a million ideas into this one simple concept. And that's why we also stress emphasis on oddments, or you call them little intuitions. That is what the inner self uses to communicate.
I appreciate all of those. I do have another question. It was remarked that um, the souls are the auric field of their next highest realm. And I know there are no hard and fast rules, and we carry our own energetic field in our biological form, even though most of us aren't able to detect it, which is our energetic resonance known as our auric field. Is that, am I understanding that right?
Hmm. From our perspective, that may be one of many different interpretations. We do have a tendency to not necessarily offer a definitive conclusion, because that can also prevent you from seeing something larger, a larger picture that may be hiding just around the bend. So, yes, auric energy may be many, many different things. We did say at the beginning that physically, corporeally, you are made up of the energy of protons. Some people may even be made up of energy of morons. We do not know. But you are made up of the dust of suns and planets and all sorts of cosmic bodies. That also manifests itself in a certain way through energy. So the human body is energy. Some people think, oh, it's just mortal, it's just flesh, as if somehow or other that is a dirty thing. But it isn't. It is as sacred as the highest thoughts you can imagine. And
Wonderful.
it isn't meant to just supply the functions of capitalism and consumerism. You have other purposes.
And another question did pop up. As good old Uncle Seth has stated, when you are at your highest excitement and taking action on your passions and totally involved in that moment, we do not age biologically as fast when we do other things. And I'm curious where channeling fits in there because it occurs outside of time in my experience because I have a very poor sense of how long it has elapsed while I'm in that state.
And that is actually a fair assessment because your concentration is no longer on the ordinary world as you interpret it, but on an inner exchange where time and space and all the other notions are suspended. So biologically, your aging process is suspended in itself, even momentarily. So over time, pardon the pun, you get an accumulation of holding patterns. So, for instance, you have heard that when astronauts go out into space, they do experience a different kind of time, as if somehow or other the chronological order has been put on hold for a short while, as does their body weight and so on and so forth. In a similar way, when you exchange energy, when you have that inner state, your concept of self is in its way put on pause. Since that concept of self is put on pause, then you do not necessarily react biologically in the same way, even if it is just for an hour over time. There is also the assistance of healing. There is also the appearance of holding back the so-called ravages of time. So over a period of time, you may end up looking a little bit younger, as if somehow you do not necessarily appear to be 60. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm channeling for a longer, healthier, and better quality of life.
Indeed, mentally and otherwise. This is all part of the process.
And it is my highest excitement, or one of them. So that fits in very well. I wish I could do it all the time. So basically, if we channeled all of our waking moments, that we could extend our lifetime significantly if that was our
Mm.
highest excitement, theoretically.
Mm, Theoretically, because otherwise there might be some glitches along the way. Because you do need to be grounded in your physical form. And in some ways, you are channeling yourself through your physical form. You're just not putting it on hold.
Excellent. Nice reminder. Thank you. We appreciate you, Kris.
Indeed.
Do you have any parting messages for us? No one has come forth with an additional query.
Mm. Then may all of your moments, as much as you can, be not to fix yourselves or anyone else, but to luxuriate in the experience at your disposal. That way, you may begin to understand that the present moment is not a waiting room. It is the experience itself. The past and the future have no hold on you unless you decide to do that. But for the best practical advice, be present to yourselves. Be present in the moment. And with that, we return Joseph to your lovely selves. Thank you for your consideration and kindness.
And yours as well, Kris. Thank you. Thank you, Serge. Even with your puppy's involvement.
He was channeling too.
I know. He
He was
wanted, I
channeling his
want,
inner tiger.
he wanted some of that energy.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. I used to back in Ottawa. This is like a long time ago in the 80s. Um, I had a Rottweiler, beautiful, beautiful boy. His name was Pharaoh, like an Egyptian, and actually he gave me his name. It just popped into my head, just like that. And I had a lady talking to Chris. Now, Pharaoh used to go sleep in the bedroom when there was somebody. And this lady became very distraught about some event in her life concerning her parents and so on. And she started crying. Pharaoh left the bedroom, came over to her, and rested his head on her lap as if to comfort her. She was blown away by that, but that's what he was like. Hmm.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that memory. Yeah. Animal love.
Oh, yeah. Where would we be without them? Well, I think we'd be less.
Oh, yeah. And I love one of my favorite quotes that I got from the Aspects of Love channeled by Kathleen Whitehead is pets are gifts of love we give ourselves to remind ourselves of the love from which we came.
I understand that. In fact, when after my Great Dane passed away last year, a few people commented about how we're very good caretakers. I said, no, he was my caretaker, and I have evidence of that. He took
Yep.
care of me.
Yep. I, I can relate.
Yep. Okay, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I,
Serge.
I
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
thank you.
Yay. And thanks to the attendees and those who are watching. And we're going to take us a short break.